It was a late Saturday evening in a quiet American suburb. The air smelled faintly of fried food from the diner across the street, and kids' laughter carried from the basketball court nearby. But in the alley behind the 7-Eleven, laughter had turned into something darker. A tall teenage boy, red cap turned backward, cornered a 15-year-old black girl named Amira. His voice dripped with mockery as he spat out words that cut sharper than fists. Before she could slip away, he shoved her hard, slamming her against the rusted green dumpster with a dull, hollow thud. She winced, her breath catching in her throat as he stepped closer, eyes full of hate. Welcome to Black Community Stories. Make sure you like and subscribe for your top-notch stories. Amira tried to steady herself, her heart pounding in her chest. The smell of rotten food from the dumpster burned her nose, but she kept her chin up. The boy wasn't alone. Two of his friends lingered a few feet away, their laughter echoing against the walls. "What's wrong?" the bully sneered. "Can't stand up for yourself. Thought you people were tougher than this." He shoved her again, harder this time, her back scraping against the dented metal. Amira gritted her teeth, refusing to give him the satisfaction of tears. Inside, though, fear and anger battled for control. She wished her father was here. He was supposed to come pick her up after his late shift, but traffic had slowed him down. She didn't know that just a few blocks away, his black SUV was cutting through the streets, his eyes scanning for his daughter. He wasn't just a father. He was Chief Petty Officer Malik Johnson, a U.S. Navy SEAL who had spent years in hostile territories overseas, and he was minutes away. The bully leaned closer, his hand gripping Amira's shoulder as if he owned the space around her. "Say something," he hissed, his spit landing near her cheek. She pushed his hand away, her voice trembling but steady. "Get off me." The moment the words left her mouth, his smirk twisted into rage. He raised his arm as though to strike her, the other kids egging him on with ugly laughter. Suddenly, the screech of tires broke through the tension. A black SUV pulled up fast at the edge of the alley, headlights washing over the group. The kids flinched, their laughter dying in their throats. The driver's door opened slowly, the sound of boots hitting the pavement sharp and deliberate. Malik stepped out, his broad shoulders filling the narrow space, his eyes locked on his daughter pressed against the dumpster. For a split second, his face was unreadable. Calm, almost too calm. "Amira," he said, his voice low but steady. She exhaled shakily, relief flooding her eyes. The bully turned, his smirk fading as he took in the sight of the man approaching. Malik's presence wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that made the air feel heavier. The boys exchanged nervous glances, but the main bully, trying to save face, squared his shoulders. "Who's this?" "Your dad?" he mocked, though his voice had lost some of its edge. Malik didn't answer right away. He looked at his daughter, checked her quickly for bruises, then slowly lifted his gaze to the boy who had laid hands on her. His jaw clenched once, the only sign of the storm brewing beneath his controlled exterior. The alley was silent now, except for the faint hum of the SUV's engine. The two boys behind the bully shifted uneasily, their sneakers scuffing against the concrete. They could feel it too. Something dangerous was in the air, something they hadn't expected when they followed their friend into this alley. Before Malik even spoke another word, the bully suddenly realized he wasn't standing in front of just another dad. He was standing in front of a man who had been trained to dismantle enemies in the dead of night, halfway across the world. But he didn't know it yet. Not fully. Not until Malik made his next move. Before we dive in deeply, let us know in the comments what country or which city you're watching this story from. We'd love to know how far this story travels. The air in the alley grew heavy. Even the street noises outside seemed to dim. Malik stood a few feet away from the bully, his expression unreadable, but his eyes sharp, fixed and steady. He didn't blink much, didn't move fast, didn't need to. His silence was louder than shouting. The bully swallowed hard but tried to hide it, then behind bravado, he puffed up his chest, stepped forward half a pace and barked. "This ain't your business, old man." She started mouthing off, so I put her in her place. He gestured toward Amira like she was an object, not a person. Malik's jaw twitched once. He took one step forward, his boots thudding on the cracked concrete. The bully instinctively stepped back, but quickly caught himself and stood firm, trying not to look weak in front of his friends. "Son," Malik said finally, his voice slow, almost calm, but carrying a weight that made the other two boys flinch. "You don't put your hands on my daughter. Ever." The main bully smirked, though his face was paler now under the alley's harsh light. "What if I did? What are you going to do about it?" He sneered, though his voice cracked slightly at the end. His friends shifted nervously, whispering to each other, already regretting staying behind. Amira moved closer to her father, her shoulder brushing against his arm. She could feel the calm power in him, like a storm waiting behind a locked gate. She whispered, "Daddy, please let's just go." Malik glanced at her briefly, nodding once, then turned his eyes back on the bully. "Apologize," Malik said simply. No shouting, no threats, just a command. The boy laughed loudly, a shaky kind of laugh that echoed too much in the narrow space. "Apologize? To her? Man, you don't know who you're talking to." He stepped forward, pointing a finger directly at Malik's chest. "You don't scare me." That was a mistake. In a blur faster than the boys could process, Malik's hand shot up, gripping the bully's wrist before it could make contact. He twisted just enough to force the boy down to one knee, not breaking anything, but making it clear how easily he could. The bully's face contorted in pain, a guttural groan leaving his throat. The two other boys froze, their eyes wide, unsure if they should run or stay. "You don't point at me," Malik said, his voice as steady as before. "And you don't touch my daughter. Do you understand?" The boy nodded quickly, his pride crumbling under the sharp pain shooting through his arm. Malik released him with a shove, and he stumbled back, clutching his wrist, gasping for air. For a moment, the alley went still again. Then Malik took a deliberate step toward the two boys hanging back. They instantly raised their hands, shaking their heads. We didn't touch her, sir," one stared. "It was all him. We just came along." Malik studied them, his silence drilling into their guilt. Finally, he said, "Then you'd better think about who you follow, because when you walk behind someone like him, you'll end up in places you don't want to be." His words cut through them like steel, and they both nodded rapidly. The bully, still rubbing his wrist, spat on the ground, his pride clashing with his fear. "You think this is over? You think—" Before he could finish, Malik stepped forward again, faster than they expected. He grabbed the front of the boy's shirt and slammed him back against the same dumpster he had used against Amira. The metal rattled loudly, echoing like thunder in the alley. The bully gasped, eyes wide with sudden panic. "You like pushing people into this dumpster?" Malik's voice was low, almost whispering. but every word was sharp enough to cut. How does it feel when it's you? Amira's heart was pounding, not just from fear anymore, but from awe. She had always known her father was strong, but seeing him now, controlled, precise, unshakable, was something different. The bully's friends were already inching toward the exit of the alley, torn between loyalty and survival. Malik held the boy there a moment longer, his hand pressing him flat against the cold metal. Then he released him abruptly, letting him drop forward, gasping for breath. "You stay away from my daughter," Malik said quietly. "If I hear even one word about you bothering her again, we'll have another conversation, and next time, I won't be this patient." The boy didn't respond. His face was red, his pride shattered, his friends already tugging at his arm, whispering for him to leave. Malik stood firm, watching them with unblinking eyes until they finally turned and hurried out of the alley, their footsteps fading into the night. Malik turned back to Amira, crouched slightly, and looked her in the eyes. His voice softened. "You okay?" She nodded, though her body was still trembling from adrenaline. He placed a protective hand on her shoulder and said, "Let's get out of here." But Malik knew it wasn't over. Not yet. The bully's eyes had promised something before he disappeared into the night, and Malik had learned long ago that threats, no matter how broken they sound, never truly vanish. The drive home was silent at first. Amira sat in the passenger seat, her seatbelt fastened tight, her hands gripping her backpack as though it were armor. Malik's eyes stayed on the road, his jaw clenched. The glow of streetlights slid across his face, showing the same calm mask he wore in dangerous places overseas. But inside, every muscle in him was burning with restraint. "You did good," Malik finally said, his voice steady. "You didn't let him see you break." Amira swallowed hard. "But he pushed me so hard, Dad. I thought." Her voice cracked, and she turned her face toward the window, ashamed of the tears that slipped out. Malik's hand tightened on the steering wheel. "Don't you dare feel weak for what happened. You hear me? He's the coward, not you." His words carried weight, firm but gentle, grounding her back into herself. The SUV pulled into their driveway. Their modest two-story home sat quiet, porch light glowing warmly against the dark. Malik parked, shut off the engine, and turned to look at his daughter. "Go inside, shower, eat something. I'll be right in." "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice small. "I just need a minute." He forced a small smile, brushing his thumb across her cheek, before she stepped out and hurried inside. Malik waited until the door closed before leaning back in his seat, exhaling the tension he had kept locked in. His mind replayed every detail of the alley, how the boy's hands shoved Amira, how his friends laughed, how close it came to being worse. And then he remembered the look in the bully's eyes before leaving. Anger, yes, but also a promise. Malik had seen that look overseas, in villages and war zones where grudges never truly died. The next morning, Amira tried to push the incident aside. She went to school like normal, her hair tied back neatly, her notebooks tucked under her arm, but whispers followed her the moment she walked through the hallways. Some kids smirked, others stared too long. Word had spread faster than she expected, stories twisted and reshaped. By lunchtime, she finally heard it clear. That's the girl who cried when Logan shoved her. Logan, the bully. His name now stuck like gum under her shoe. Amira sat at her table, her food untouched, her stomach churning. She wanted to disappear, but she refused to leave. Meanwhile, Malik wasn't at ease either. He sat in his home office, laptop open, pretending to sort through work files. But his thoughts circled back to one thing: Logan. He typed the name into the school directory system he had access to as a parent volunteer. Full name: Logan Riker. Age: 16. Father: Robert Riker. The name made Malik pause. He knew it, not from the neighborhood, but from the news. Robert Riker was a city council member, loud about law and order speeches, always appearing on local channels. Malik leaned back, the pieces clicking together. A bully with a politician father. That explained the arrogance, the sense of untouchable power. Logan hadn't just been some random kid looking for trouble. He was used to getting away with it. At school, Amira was forced to face him again sooner than she expected. Logan stood by the lockers, his wrist wrapped in a bandage, his face flushed with humiliation. When he saw her walking past, his lips curled into a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "You think you're safe now just because your daddy showed up," he muttered, just loud enough for her to hear. Amira's chest tightened, but she didn't stop walking. She couldn't give him the satisfaction. Still, the words burrowed into her, stinging sharper than the bruise on her back. That evening, Malik picked her up and noticed the silence in her eyes before she spoke. "He's still bothering you," he said. Not a question, but a statement. She nodded slowly. Malik's fingers tapped against the steering wheel. He wasn't just thinking like a father now. He was thinking like a SEAL, analyzing threats, anticipating next moves. If Logan didn't back down, things could escalate. Malik knew bullies. They always tested boundaries until they broke. But what Logan didn't know was that Malik had spent years setting boundaries with men twice his size and 10 times more dangerous. 2 nights later, the test came. Malik had just returned from an evening run when he noticed a faint sound outside, a scrape against the side of the house. His instincts sharpened instantly. He moved silently through the dark living room, every step calculated, his breath steady. A shadow flickered by the kitchen window. Malik froze, eyes narrowing. Then came a muffled laugh, followed by the unmistakable sound of something metallic clinking against glass. His daughter was upstairs. His home had just become a battlefield. The faint metallic clink against the kitchen window snapped Malik's senses into full alert. His breathing slowed, his muscles coiled, every nerve sharpened the way they had in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in places where a wrong move meant not coming home. But this was his house. His daughter was upstairs. That made the stakes higher than any mission. He moved soundlessly through the living room, his bare feet gliding across the hardwood floor. Another muffled laugh drifted in, followed by a hissed whisper. "Hurry up, man, before he comes out." Malik's jaw tightened. He recognized the voice immediately. Logan. He crouched near the window, keeping himself out of sight. Through the gap in the curtain, he caught a glimpse of 3 figures in the yard. Logan was at the center, fumbling with a can of spray paint, his bandaged wrist making the task clumsy. The other 2 boys, his followers from the alley, shifted nervously, looking around like they knew they didn't belong here. On the siding of Malik's house, an ugly slur was half-sprayed in dripping black paint. The hiss of the can filled the night, every letter scratching deeper into Malik's patience. He could have burst through the door right then, could have dragged Logan to the ground, restrained him in ways that would leave no doubt who held control. But Malik wasn't just thinking about this moment. He was thinking about what would follow, the retaliation, the story that would spin out of control once Logan's father found out. So he watched, waited, measured. Then Logan, emboldened by his own noise, whispered, "This'll teach them. Nobody disrespects me. Not her, not him." He kicked over a potted plant near the porch for emphasis, his laugh breaking the silence like a hammer through glass. That was enough. Malik moved. He slid to the back door, opened it with a silence born of years of training, and stepped into the night. The cool air wrapped around him, but his blood ran hot. He crossed the yard in 3 precise strides before Logan even realized someone was behind him. A hand clamped down on Logan's shoulder, firm, unshakable. Logan froze, the spray can slipping from his grip, hissing against the grass. The 2 other boys jumped back, eyes wide, already ready to run. "Don't," Malik said quietly, his voice carrying a command that froze them in place. He turned Logan around slowly, the boy's smirk vanishing when he met Malik's eyes. "Mr. Johnson," Logan stammered, trying to pull free. But Malik's grip tightened, not enough to hurt, but enough to remind Logan of the alley. "You made a mistake," Malik said, his words low and deliberate. "A big one." Logan tried to gather his courage. You can't touch me. My dad." Malik stepped closer, his face inches away. "Your dad isn't here. And if he were, I'd tell him the same thing. You crossed the line." The 2 boys shuffled nervously, whispering to each other, clearly regretting every step that led them here. Malik shifted his eyes toward them, his stare pinning them like insects. "Go home," he ordered. They didn't argue. Their sneakers pounded against the pavement as they bolted down the street, leaving Logan alone in Malik's grip. For a long moment, the yard was silent except for Logan's shallow breathing. Malik studied him, the tremor in his jaw, the false bravado leaking away. He wanted to end it right there, to make Logan understand in a way he'd never forget. But another instinct pressed in, the one that came from years of discipline. Control. "You think you're untouchable because of your last name," Malik said. "But out here, that doesn't protect you. It doesn't shield you from consequences." Logan tried to twist free again, his voice breaking. "Let me go." Malik released him abruptly, the sudden lack of force making Logan stumble backward. He fell to the ground, hands scraping against the concrete. Malik loomed over him, his shadow cast long under the porch light. "You listen carefully," Malik said, his voice cutting through the night. "You come near my daughter again, you come near my house again, and you'll regret it in ways you can't imagine." Logan scrambled to his feet, anger and humiliation mixing in his eyes. "You'll regret this. You don't know who my father is." Malik's gaze hardened. "And you don't know who I am." For the first time, Logan hesitated, truly hesitated. Something in Malik's voice, something in his posture made him falter, but instead of retreating, he spat on the ground, turned, and bolted into the darkness. Malik stood there a long time, the night air cool against his skin, the slur half-written on his wall burning in his vision. He knew this wasn't finished. Logan wasn't the kind of boy to back down, not with a father like his. Inside, Amira stirred upstairs, the faint creak of her bedroom floor reaching Malik's ears. He took one last look at the damage outside, then stepped back into his house, locking the door behind him. What he didn't know was that Logan's father had already heard a twisted version of the alley story, and now, tonight's encounter would only fan the flames. The following morning, Malik woke to the rumble of voices outside his home. He peered through the blinds and saw 2 black SUVs parked across the street. Men in suits lingered near them, talking into radios. At the center stood Robert Riker, Logan's father. Tall, silver hair, sharp suit, and that trademark politician's smile plastered on his face, though his eyes carried something colder. Malik's stomach tightened. He had seen men like Riker overseas, men who wielded influence like a weapon, hiding behind titles and power. And now, that power was parked right in front of his house. By mid-morning, Malik's doorbell rang. He opened it slowly, his posture calm but ready. Riker stood there, his smile tight. "Mr. Johnson," he said smoothly, his voice practiced like a speech. "We need to talk about last night." Malik didn't move aside. "Your son vandalized my property and threatened my daughter. That's what we need to talk about." Riker's smile stiffened. "My son tells me you assaulted him in an alley a few nights ago, left his wrist nearly broken. You're a dangerous man, Mr. Johnson. I could have the police here in minutes." Malik leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Then do it. Let's see how the evidence lines up. Cameras in that alley, the paint still dripping on my wall. You think your boy's the only one with a story?" For the first time, Riker's smile slipped. His eyes narrowed. "You're making a mistake, Johnson. You don't know how deep my reach goes." Malik stepped forward, closing the space between them. His voice dropped low, the kind of tone that came from a man who had stared death in the eye and never blinked. "And you don't know how deep mine goes." Riker froze. He wasn't used to being challenged, not like this. Malik's eyes didn't waver, didn't flinch. For the briefest moment, Riker saw something in them that unsettled him, a reminder that some men don't need titles or money to wield power. The standoff ended with Riker stepping back, forcing a chuckle to mask his discomfort. "This isn't over," he muttered. "Neither is it for me," Malik replied, and closed the door. But the tension didn't end there. Over the next week, Amira noticed whispers at school intensify. Logan strutted through the halls like nothing had happened, his friends feeding off his arrogance. Teachers looked the other way, some even giving Amira subtle glances as if she were the problem. It was the weight of influence at work, her word against his father's name. Malik saw the toll it was taking. Every evening Amira seemed quieter, her laughter fading. He knew he couldn't let this drag out. And so one night, he made a decision. He pulled out a locked metal case from his closet, the kind most people never see. Inside were mementos from his years as a SEAL, medals, folded flags, and a single flash drive. He had kept records, his deployments, his commendations, evidence of the missions he had survived when the odds were impossible, proof of who he was and why he was not a man to be pushed around. The next day, Malik didn't go to work. Instead, he drove to the local news station. He met with an old contact, a reporter who owed him a favor. Malik told her everything, the attack, the vandalism, the threats. He handed her the flash drive, not for the missions, but for the credibility it gave. She listened, her pen scratching furiously across the notepad. By evening, the story was on the air. A respected Navy SEAL veteran's daughter harassed by a city councilman's son. Video clips from the alley surfaced, leaked from a nearby business camera. The spray paint on Malik's house was shown in sharp detail. Public opinion shifted like a tide. At school, Amira walked in the next morning to silence. Not laughter, not whispers, just silence. Logan wasn't there, suspended pending an investigation. His father's smug grin had disappeared from the television, replaced by defensive press conferences and calls for accountability. That night, Amira sat on the porch with her father, the summer air warm around them. For the first time in weeks, she let herself lean against him, safe in the knowledge that the weight wasn't hers to carry alone. "You didn't have to fight for me like that," she whispered. Malik placed an arm around her shoulders, his gaze steady on the horizon. "That's what fathers do, and besides, some fights are worth it." The cicadas hummed in the background, the night calm once more. For Amira, the fear that had haunted her was replaced by something else: pride. Not just in her father, but in herself, for standing tall, for surviving, for not breaking. And for Logan and his father, the message was clear. Some families cannot be bullied, no matter how much power you think you have. The end. Please like and subscribe for more rich stories like this. Comment below. Also, if you really loved this video and want to support the channel directly, you can hit that super thanks button below.